next week. I'll be in Ottawa participating with the Prime Minister in consultations, for example, with Métis Nations around getting major projects done quickly. Our focus is going to turn to what we need to do to ensure that key sectors of the Canadian economy, steel, aluminum, automobiles, lumber, are able to go through this difficult period with these sectoral tariffs applying, as they do around the world. We're going to focus on what's necessary to support those businesses and focus on the things we need to do to build one Canadian economy and get major nation-building projects done quickly.
What seems to be the sticking point in the negotiations?
But not one economic relationship with the United States is like another. So you see different countries conclude agreements with different levels of specificity because their conversations are different than all the other countries. So Canada has one of the most integrated economic relationships with the United States. That's why the sectoral tariffs are necessarily so difficult for us, but the Government of Canada will do what we have to do to support those industries. My conversations with Secretary Lutnick have been constructive. We've learned a lot this week again of what the Americans are concerned about and where the opportunity might be at the right moment to get the best deal for Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. We've said many times, the Prime Minister's repeated it, that we're not going to accept any deal because of an arbitrary timeline that the Americans set. We're going to do the work that's necessary to get the best deal for the country. If yesterday afternoon that deal wasn't clearly on the table, then we'll continue to talk to the Americans. I agreed with Secretary Lutnick that we'd talk on the phone next week and figure out a chance to get together again later in August. But in the meantime, we have important work to do at home, building the resiliency of the Canadian economy. Canadians elected us to get major projects done quickly, so that's going to be obviously a huge focus in the coming weeks and months.
What's your message to Canadians who are reading the news today and they're worried about their jobs and things potentially costing more because of these tariffs?
I think Canadians need to understand that the Prime Minister has been clear from the very beginning that the government will do what is necessary to support sectors of the Canadian economy and workers that are facing an unjustified trade action by the United States. We're working obviously with provinces and territories in a very collaborative way to ensure that we have the right series of measures to support Canadian businesses and workers. But we've also said to Canadians that we can give ourselves a lot more than any other foreign country can take away. So we can build big things in the Canadian economy in the coming months and the coming years. We can do so with Canadian labor and Canadian workers and Canadian steel and Canadian aluminum. And we can also, the rest of the world is knocking at Canada's door to increase their trading opportunities with us. Every international trip the Prime Minister goes on, he comes back and tells us that international businesses and other foreign heads of government are anxious to collaborate with Canada. We were elected on a mandate to build the strongest economy in the G7. That comes from diversifying our trading relationships, building big projects at home, but recognizing that the United States will continue to be our neighbor, continue to be our most important economic and security partner. So we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. We need to be able to have constructive conversations with them, do what's necessary in the best interest of the Canadian economy, but be less dependent and more resilient on our own.
Do you know when you're coming back to Washington?
I would expect I'll be back later in August. As I say, I would expect to talk to Howard Lutnick next week. He and I agreed that we'd get together in the coming weeks. I know Ambassador Hillman is continuing to talk to counterparts in the American administration and on Capitol Hill. So the doors aren't closed, the doors are open, the conversations are ongoing, and we'll do the work necessary to get the right deal for Canadians, not simply any deal.